Hello. On behalf of the AFT and Share My Lesson, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's keynote with Mary Pope Osborne on storytelling, teaching, and the magic of books. My name is Leslie Getzinger, and I'm Deputy Director of the AFT Communications Department, and I will be your moderator today. Before we begin, let's watch a short video from today's sponsor.
Today's webinars are brought to you by HIQ. Creativity is the 21st century skill that few schools teach. HIQ is an exciting new company that has figured out how to do that. In addition, HIQ helps students find direction, engagement, and ideas. Help students develop creativity with HIQ.
Welcome to this virtual conference. HIQ improves creativity, the 21st century skill no one teaches. We are pleased to join the American Federation of Teachers Share My Lesson to support teachers, educators, and parents everywhere. To overcome the challenges we face, we need the ideas, spirit, and imagination of all of us committed to better education.
Okay, now let's do a practice poll question. All of our polls today will pop up on your screen with an audio alert. So the question we have here is, how often do you use social media? So please be sure to hit submit and to have your answer recorded. And so while you're answering, I'd like to introduce our wonderful keynote speaker, Mary Pope Osborne. So it is my great honor to introduce Mary. She is a beloved storyteller whose books have ignited the imaginations of millions of young readers. Mary Pope Osborne is best known as the author of the Magic Treehouse series, one of the most popular and endearing children's book series of all time. Since the publication of Dinosaurs Before Dark in 1992, Jack and Annie's time-traveling adventures have transported readers across history, cultures, and mythologies, fostering a love of reading and learning in children worldwide. Over the course of her career, Mary has authored more than 100 books, ranging from picture books to young adult novels, and has been recognized with numerous accolades and awards. Beyond her writing, Mary is a passionate advocate for education and literacy. And through her Classroom Adventures program, she has worked to bring books and resources to students and teachers, ensuring that the magic of reading reaches as many young minds as possible. Through Mary's Gift of Books program, she has given over 1.2 million books to underserved children across the country. Woohoo, Mary. Mary has accomplished this with the help of her longtime partner, First Book. And just recently, the First Book team put together the following video that we'd like to share with you here.
At our school, we have a large population of children without access to books. These wonderful stories inspire a child to learn to love to read. My job as a teacher is not to teach kids to read and answer questions, but ultimately to love picking up a book and enjoy the journey it takes you on.
This year, my class fell in love with Mary Pope Osborne's books. They could not get enough of the historical fiction genre. One child in particular read every title in my class library. Based on his recommendations, the rest of the group couldn't wait to read about Jack and Annie's adventures.
Our school, Paradise Elementary School, was destroyed in the Camp Fire on November 8th, 2018. We were relocated to an empty school in Oroville, California, where we created a school in 4 short days. Since our school was a total loss, we needed everything, especially books. Having Mary's books back in our classrooms and library gives us a small sense of normal. Everything that was once familiar was lost, and with the books returning that we know and love, we are slowly starting to feel like we're going to make it. We're going to be all right.
My students and I are enjoying traveling on this magical journey with Jack and Annie. My students still need urgent intervention, but their reading scores are rising. Their self-esteem is rising. Our mission is to inspire students to dream, teach them to unite with others, and give them confidence to venture out of their comfort zone so they can achieve their goals. Thank you for such a wonderful gift.
Because ours is a high poverty district, many of our families cannot afford books. We teachers spend hundreds of dollars of our personal money, but our resources are limited. Our students particularly enjoy Magic Treehouse books and look forward to the next book in the series. Mary Pope Osborne's generosity has opened worlds and changed lives. We are so grateful.
All right. Thank you. And so now we are really excited to welcome Mary Pope Osborne to speak to us. Mary, hello.
Hello. Nice to be here today talking to teachers, my favorite audience.
Well, we're very excited to have you, Mary, and thank you for all the books you've donated and your wonderful partnership with First Book. I'm just going to start it off. And Mary, could you tell us a little bit about your work as a children's book author and how you got started and where Magic Treehouse, got its start?
Sure. I would say it started in childhood. When I was young, I grew up in military bases, and I had a twin brother, still do, and a younger brother and an older sister. And because we moved so much and we were always together from one house to the next, to the next, to the next, we were each other's best friends. And what we did all the time was play make-believe. It was all we did. We seldom watched TV, maybe at night. But all the time, our parents, when we weren't in school, were throwing us outside and just letting us roam the world around us. And we had boundaries, but we could take our bikes or go on foot and explore whatever army post we were living on. And we got very close to nature in that process. We were always in the dirt and knees in the grass and up trees, and in the summer capturing lightning bugs and collecting locust shells, and very much involved with our environment and pretending all the time that we were somebody else. And I know that's where my storytelling started. When I finally got to high school and I couldn't, quote, play anymore, I literally started getting into plays. There was a theater near my family, and my dad had just retired, and we were in North Carolina, and I was walking the block to this theater almost every day after school and appearing in shows and working backstage and getting myself into a world that was just as make-believe as the one I'd created in childhood. I went into college to study theater, and I changed my major to world religions because I got very interested in other cultures and times and places. So after I graduated, I literally put a pack on my back and went overseas. This is in the 70s, so it was pretty amazing then, and I could travel with a friend, and we traveled through much of Europe and even into Asia. Took a year, but all those travel adventures, which were really on the dime, even stayed in a cave in Crete for 6 weeks instead of paying for a hotel. But we had a wonderful time, except that it just wasn't real life, I am sad to say. Came back to the States and lived in Washington, D.C. And one night I went to the theater, and this handsome actor walked on the stage playing Jesse James the Outlaw. And he was playing a guitar. I wore boots and a cowboy hat. And I fell in love from the balcony. And I had a friend in the show, and I met the actor playing Jesse, and I've been married to him now for 48 years. So I think our whole life has been around make-believe. He's still Jesse to me. In fact, a friend at a recent anniversary wrote a song called "Will You Marry Me, Jesse James," for our anniversary. But Will and I have been great partners because as he was in theater and a writer and a singer and a musician, he inspired me. When I moved to New York to live with him, marry him, I would have a day job, a night job, actually working in restaurants and bars and, being a bartender, anything I could do so I could write all day. And I would walk around Manhattan. We had a teeny little apartment that you couldn't even, I worked in the closet for a long time. And then I started taking my tablet, my pen around the city. And one day I started a story about my own childhood when I was 12 and shared that with a friend who was a writer, my only friend I knew who had ever published a book. And she gave it to her agent. They gave it to a publisher. The next thing I knew, they asked if I could rewrite the book and make it longer and deeper. And I really had never thought of myself as a serious writer until I was getting this attention. I worked as hard as I could. I rewrote the whole book, and it was published. And then I kept writing, and that was a YA. And I wrote 4 YAs. And that was in the time when the big corporations were not demanding huge royalty earnings from authors to keep publishing them. So I was very lucky in that they kept publishing me, even though I got, nice reviews, but they nurtured my career. And I wrote all kinds of things. I mean, that's the joy of children's books. I wrote picture books and retellings of mythology and myths and fairy tales, Norse mythology, American tall tales. I wrote mysteries. I just loved the form. I love that you could find a form and then you would have your own content and you could select how to present that to the world of children. But I wasn't in education at all. I didn't have children. I had never studied teaching or how to deal with children. It was really stuff that I was most interested in that I was writing. But then Random House contacted me and said, how would you like to do a series? And we're selecting 3 authors to start a series. And one is Barbara Park to do Junie B. Jones, and Louis Sacker, Marvin Redpost, and then you, Mary, but you can decide what you'd like to write about. So because I had such wide interests and I love travel and I love different cultures and loved mythology, I decided I wanted to do time travel. So I said, how will I get some kids back in time? Well, you would be astonished at all the odd things I thought of. I first did a magic cellar. And I tried magic whistles. Then I tried writing about a magic artist studio and then a magic museum. None of these were good books. I have to say, I just kept trying and trying. And meanwhile, I'm kind of thinking I should get back to my other work because I was really enjoying that. And I was planning to write for adults and the theater. I had all. We had a little cabin in Pennsylvania. And my husband and I took a walk. And we saw a treehouse, and it was all falling down, and the child who'd had it had long ago left it, I'm sure. But we said, and Will, I said, is very creative, my husband Will, and we said, what if you have a magic treehouse? Well, that was really interesting to me because it could fly everywhere and not be noticed if it was high in the trees. But how was I going to get it to move? How was it going to be magic? Then I came up with the idea of filling it with books. And so you would open a book in the magic treehouse and make a wish, and whoosh, you were there. And then your adventure would really start. Some assignment that was sent to you, then you didn't know the source of the person sending it. That's what I came up with. And it had taken a year to write that first little book of Magic Treehouse, Dinosaurs Before Dark. And I wrote Dinosaurs Before Dark. And I wanted, the publisher said, you'll make some decent money on this because we're going to put it in Target and Kmart and Walmart. It's going to be mass market, not a trade book. It won't probably be reviewed. It won't be up for awards. It'll just be huge numbers of them. So that was pleasing. And I thought, well, if I did that, then I could support my other habit, which was to write more serious work for older readers. Well, something happened that changed my life. I had never before in my life received letters from any of my readers because I was writing for myself. I'll admit it. I was writing for what I was interested in. But now I had readers and I was getting letters from teachers. And they were telling me that these little books were helping their kids learn to read in first, second, third grade. I got so excited. And then I started getting letters from kids. And that just put me over the moon because I had never before gotten letters from kids. And then I said, well, maybe I should go to schools. And I figured out through a bookseller in Pennsylvania who advised me of how to present myself as someone who could travel to a school. This is in the 90s. I had a bunch of slides made and I got some engagements, and I would travel by bus or train, sometimes plane, and stay in motels and carry my slides around the country. And I went from one school to the next, to the next, to the next. And what I learned when I went to schools was the magic of education and what teachers were doing. And I saw astonishing works. I saw bulletin boards where kids had made covers of Magic Tree House. I saw rainforest displays and shoebox dioramas and storm centers and cave drawings and hieroglyphics and African masks. I saw a special needs classroom where they'd lined up the desk and let the children pretend they were plane seats, and they would get a passport and fly somewhere in the world and then have a lunch based on the book the kids had all shared in the classroom. It was that kind of magic. And I was stunned by it, and I fell in love with it. And I told my people at Random House, I said, you guys, you don't know what teachers are doing out there. So I'm going to present to you, I'm going to my own publisher, show you what you have. And I brought in a big box of letters and pictures, photographs I'd taken, and began to present what Magic Tree House could be if they just saw what I saw. And I even took some editors and marketing people with me to some nearby schools and showed them the enthusiasm from the kids and the teachers. So that really got me going in alignment with my publisher to promote and write these books. I pretty soon signed a contract at that time to do 12 more, which was really, I thought I'll never get through 12. I'll never figure out that many stories. And right now I'm working on the 67th story. So this whole adventure has been unbelievable from beginning to end. And now I'm 33 years later into the writing. But as I said, the teachers inspired me. I had wonderful illustrators, Sal Murdoka and A.G. Ford. And then my husband came up with the idea of starting a nonfiction series to go with my fiction, which is now the Magic Tree House Fact Trackers. And Will, my husband, and my sister Natalie wrote over, I would say, almost 50 Magic Tree House nonfiction books to go with my fiction. I was the only one who wrote the fiction, but their books would be companions to my books. So if I went to the time of dinosaurs, they would write all about the facts of dinosaurs, and on and on and on. And we're all working in our separate lanes, but having a wonderful time, and sometimes traveling together to schools and bookstores around the country. And Will and I did a book tour in Europe and a lot of countries, and we went to Japan twice because these were places where the kids were really enjoying the books. Well, what was really happening was that just unwittingly in the beginning, I was helping kids learn to read. And I was learning a huge job that teachers have of teaching kids to read, and the magic of that, and how special it is when you can get a child to cross the threshold into the world of reading. There's a wonderful passage I wanted to share because I don't think anything in the world has ever taught me more about the magic of reading. It's from Betty Smith in the book A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. She's the character Francie. In real life, it is herself, but she fictionalizes herself. For quite a while, Francie had been spelling out letters, sounding them, and then putting the sounds together to mean a word. But one day she looked at a page, and the word mouse had instantaneous meaning. She looked at the word, and the picture of a gray mouse scampered through her mind. She looked further, and when she saw horse, she heard him pawing the ground and saw the sun glint on his glossy coat. The word running hit her suddenly, and she breathed hard as though running herself. The barrier between the individual sound of each letter and the whole meaning of the word was removed, and the printed word meant a thing at one quick glance. She read a few pages rapidly and almost became ill with excitement. She wanted to shout it out. She could read. She could read. That's true magic. And that's the magic that I see over and over again. So I don't want to sound so proud of my mission, because what I receive back from kids way outweighs what I give them. For me, there's no greater joy than having an audience of 6 to 10-year-olds. They're old enough to be individuals, but they're young enough to have this amazing innocence. They haven't gotten into their phones. They haven't gotten into social media or peer pressure. So they're so open to learning, and they're so respectful toward adults and authors who give them books. All the classrooms I've been to around the world have had the same kind of openness and joyful anticipation of reading a book. I've met amazing kids. I've been to classrooms in New Orleans after Katrina. I was in Japan right after the tsunami, touring the tsunami area in northern Japan. I was in Manhattan downtown right after 9/11, talking to kids who had actually seen the planes fly into the buildings. I've talked to orphans and the Dave Thomas Foundation and Make-A-Wish Foundation. I've talked to kids who have cancer. I've been, over the years, really had wonderful encounters with kids with special needs, deafness even. I went to a deaf school and the kids were so wonderful and warm. I've met a lot of kids who had no books in their homes, in their neighborhoods, hardly in their schools. I've been to lots of schools with no libraries. I've also met wonderful kids who come from good homes and a lot of privilege, but I find that all these kids have that same kind of innocence and joy about using their imaginations. And for this reason, and because of all the teachers I've met, for the 20th anniversary of the series, which was a little more than 10 years ago, I started the Magic Treehouse Classroom Adventures program that's run by a wonderful director named Cindy Mill. And this program's free of charge. I wanted to give teachers the gift of time so that they wouldn't have to do a ton of work. If they have their books in the classroom they want to share, we have a curriculum guide. We have a reading level guide for all the books, and a whole life lessons about what teachers can talk to kids about once they've read one of the books. Lots of information is on this site. It's Magic Treehouse Classroom Adventures. If you just Google that, you'll find it. But the whole purpose is to make learning fun and to make reading inviting and exciting. We also started the Magic Treehouse plays. Teachers said that kids would like to perform Jack and Annie stories in their classrooms. So my husband, Will, from the theater, our best friend, Randy, who's a composer who was a lot off Broadway, and his wife, an award-winning playwright, Jenny Laird, the three of them have written more than 8 Magic Treehouse musicals that are done all over the country. And I just sit back and they invite me into the theater and I get to see a musical of one of Jack and Annie's adventures. And it's as joyful for me and surprising as I hope it is for the kids. So that's really pretty special with my sister, my husband, and our best friends working on the series. It's a little, like, I would say a little, it feels like it comes out of our kitchen up here in Western Massachusetts. But anyway, if you look at Magic Treehouse on stage online, you'll see all the different shows. And also, for a great number of the shows, you can get a kit from Music Theater International that'll provide you with everything you need. You have to pay for it. It's not hugely expensive, fortunately, to put on a show in your own school, community center, after-school program, and you get the kids performing for other kids. And sometimes it's going to be the only time they ever get on a stage and perform in their lives, but it'll introduce them to the joy of that realm of the imagination. So there's also, I want to tell you, a great Magic Treehouse website with Random House. It's a teacher site. It has a lot of wonderful things that will inspire your work in the classroom. And both between us and Random House, we have lesson plans for every single book. And I should make clear for those of you who aren't familiar with it, that there are two tiers of Magic Treehouse. There's the regular ones. There are 40 of those with very, first, second grade reading level. And then we jump up to another tier, and I call those the Magic Treehouse Merlin missions. And they're twice as long as those first books, and they're a little harder vocabulary and reading, but that's what kids can grow into. Then there's the nonfiction, which accompanies books from both those areas. And now we have the Magic Tree House graphic novels. And those are adapted by my friend Jenny Laird, who lives down the block. And they're done by art. The art is done by two astonishing twin sisters in Washington State, Nicole and Kelly Matthews. And Nicole and Kelly get this adapted story of the whole first line of books from Jenny, and then they begin to do the art. And as you can see on the screen, the first one to come out is this spring. It's a nonfiction. The first fiction that came out and is beautiful is the Dinosaurs Before Dark book. But now, a few years later, the nonfiction, I'm sorry, I'm trying to show this on the screen. The nonfiction book is going to accompany the fiction. So these, at first, when Random House said, would you like to do graphic novels? I was resistant. I thought, well, no, I want kids to read the whole books. But then I did my research, and I found out that teachers told me this too, that a lot of reluctant readers can get into read with the graphics. So that once I knew that was proof, and in an educational way, I said fine. And now we have, I would say we have 8 out and a few more coming in process. So that's another exciting adventure. But the First Book organization has partnered with me to help get books to classrooms, especially in underserved areas. And that's been a fantastic partnership. We work together. They deliver the books, and we put the orders in for the books, and we get a grant proposal is on our website. Teachers of Title I schools can submit their ideas for how they would use the books in their classrooms. And if they're selected, then we can send that classroom, like if you want the first 4 for every child, we can take care of that for the most part. So that's, and then we've had wonderful partnerships of doing our plays, musicals at different cities around the country, and given books to all the kids who see the play. But like in Chicago, we did our musical based on the Magic Treehouse book on Shakespeare, Stage Fright on a Summer Night. And all the second graders in Chicago got a copy of the Shakespeare book. And the play was piped into all their schools, because probably only 1,000 actually came to the theater in Chicago to see the show. But we did the same with a play about a musical in Jackie Robinson in Orlando. I think it was last winter, where all the kids got the Jackie Robinson Magic Treehouse Big Day for Baseball. And then they got the show. They could plug in to see the whole musical and learn. I mean, what they're always learning is how you adapt from one form to the next. So I've just had a fabulous time. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world, and I love everything I do. And I get the best letters you have ever read. I will read you 3 short lines from letters, so you see how wonderful my life is. I like your book because it almost made me smart. I like that one. And they try to raise my self-esteem a lot. Your books are the best in the whole entire world. You are a star. Yes, you are a genius of tomorrow. One person wrote, if you keep making these books, I will keep reading them, and I hope this inspires you to be a better writer. And a recent one I got is one of my favorites. I'll share this one. I may be interested in reading your books. Our classroom has a lot of your books. I haven't read your books yet, but maybe I will. And he signed it, I'm your biggest fan. So it's magic, right? It's just, I have a wonderful time with educators and kids and my family and friends and loved ones who helped me with the series. So I think that's really what I came to say. I do want to say that we have a special giveaway to Title I educators in conjunction with this conference that everyone is attending. If you have a Title I school in your life, you're eligible for the first book, and I will give you the opportunity to receive $75 to spend on the first book marketplace on your favorite Magic Treehouse books. And also, I want to read this to you. I want to add that Magic Treehouse is proud to have a new page on the Share My Lesson website where teachers can get resources from our classroom adventure site. So now I think I'll hand it over to Leslie to get some questions, and we'll give you some answers about what's coming down the pike with Magic Treehouse and what I'm working on now.
Thank you so much, Mary. That's wonderful. Thank you for all that information, and thank you for the generous donation as well to the participants of this webinar and of the Share My Lesson conference. I know your books are really loved. I have to say, I have a whole stack of them right here on my desk. And we have AFT, we've been very lucky to give out many of your books at a lot of the events that we've done as well. So,
thank you.
And we have a lot of questions in here. So I think we just did a poll that just went out and that people answered. So I'm going to go straight to the Q&A. From Ashley Thompson. She would like to know if you have a favorite. I'm going to combine two of Ashley's questions. Do you have a favorite Magic Treehouse book? And also she wanted to know how many countries are your books published in?
Oh, well, you know, that's the second question is really fun to answer. It's, as far as I know, right now in about 36 languages, but that covers 100 countries. So it's really around the world. And that speaks well of the world in terms of children, because there are kids out there who love adventure and love to learn. And I just, my heart is so warmed. I've been into events where we had representatives from different countries to the Bologna Book Fair. And it was like a little UN with each book publisher standing up to say how they use the books in their country. So yeah, that's a great bonus of this. And my favorite book, it's just like telling your favorite child. I almost always love the book I'm working on at the moment the most, because I'm so wholeheartedly involved with the characters and the setting. And I'll tell you a book that's coming out in the spring. I have a piece of paper that shows the cover, but I'm going to try this again. It's counterintuitive. There's the cover. Jack and Annie go to Monterey, California, and have an adventure with otters, sea otters. So I would say up until recently, this was the one closest to my heart. But now I'm working on a book about a girl in England in 1812 who was only 12 years old, and she had a horrible, hard life. All her siblings had died. Her father had died. Their mother and she were going to be sent to the poorhouse. She would go to the coast every day and have a little hammer and hit the cliffs and discover fossils. She ended up being the greatest fossil finder of all time. And her name was Mary Annie. And Jack and Annie are going to have this great adventure with her. Everything about her in the book that I wrote is true, where she finds the first sea reptile that was like 17 feet long. She found the bones of it that were fossilized, and that was the beginning of her stardom in that world. But anyway, I love talking about the different subjects because they're so exciting.
Well, here is sort of a follow-up question from Lindsay. She says, my son would like to know which Magic Treehouse book is your least favorite.
Oh, no, you're telling me not to like one of my children. I can't do that. You know, the truth is some are harder to write than others. But one is not coming to mind that really annoyed me. Oh, I should say my favorite one of all time, because it was the hardest one to write. It took a whole year to write it. And it's a super edition that's not even in either category. I told you, this is for more middle grade. It's called World at War, 1944. And it's about Jack and Annie going to Europe and helping the French resistance, if you can believe it. I know one reviewer said, if Jack and Annie can fight the Nazis, they can do anything. That it works. Somehow, weirdly, it works. But that took the hardest work I've ever done. But it was so gratifying.
Well, that's good. Well, that kind of another question that kind of leads us to is from Jennifer, who'd like to know, what advice would you give to young writers who want to use their imagination to write stories of their own?
Oh, wonderful advice. You're so lucky, Jennifer, because when I was growing up, we didn't really write stories. No authors ever came to our schools. It was just unknown that we could write a story. So you're way ahead of where I was when I was your age, whatever that is. But I feel like the best tips I can give would involve rewrite, because that's the secret of my work. When I'm working on a Magic Treehouse book seriously, and I do work on a laptop, I don't think I could do this if I were working by hand like I did in the beginning. I may rewrite 30 times because I'm going over and over it, simplifying it, mostly simplifying it so it can hit my readers but not lose the depth of the story. But I have such a good time doing that. And then the other thing is, take breaks. Like if you get stuck, this is kind of folklore that every writer knows. Get stuck. Don't keep trying to fix the problem or figure out what to do. Take a break. Go have some tea. Walk your dog. Read a little. Whatever you can do to break that eddy, like you're in a whirlpool. And when you come back, so often your unconscious has been working on the problem and it's there, it's solved. It's kind of wonderful. That's when you feel that it's more than just ourselves writing, something comes through us because you've unblocked the muse, so to speak. And then the third thing is have fun. And if you're not having fun, like intense curiosity about what you're doing, you might need to stop and rethink, is this the story I want to tell? Because the real secret is wanting to sit down and work and not call it work, call it play, just like we did when we were kids and went outside.
Yep. Good advice. Very good advice. So a lot of questions coming in. We're going to put the link, the first book link that's up for people that are asking for it in the chat, I think in just a couple minutes. But Amanda asked if there are any plans for a TV show. I love the book so much. Tyson and I listen to your books every night on an audiobook for bedtime. We love listening. We love using your books in our lessons as well.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention we have audio books that I narrate, and that's a wonderful adventure too. TV. We have had many starts down that road over the many years, and we turned around and ran away. And I think we ran away because we didn't want to lose our vision, and people would, wine and dine us and then want to take it away. And I didn't want to pass it on to people where we weren't involved, my little team up here. But then this wonderful group contacted us from LA, and they are working with us totally as partners. And we've been working with them for about a year. And that's all I'll say at this point. But this has been a great extension of the sort of workshop we have in our lives where we don't lose connection to what we're doing, and we can approve and think that it represents what kids want to see through all our experiences. And I'm saying my husband and myself, and then our friends who write the plays are also involved in putting together the potential TV show. So to be seen later, maybe, hopefully.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so another question for you. John asks, with AI technology coming at us in full force, do you ever use it to assist you now with your books?
No, John, I have never used AI. I don't know how to use AI. I think I get enough, though, from the internet just by looking at sources. And then, of course, I order a whole library for every subject. I much prefer working from real books. That's the way it's always been. And I have shelves of books about sea otters and books about rhinos and books about, this is what I did last time, Mongolia. So I really like working with physical books. But on the internet, I can find information from aquariums and zoos, and it's amazing. You can find anything. In the beginning, I couldn't find anything anywhere. I would literally walk the streets of New York and go into every library they had and look for information. I remember the Sabertooth book, Sunset on the Sabertooth. I found great information in an unknown library at the Museum of Natural History in New York. And I also talked to consultants, and all the nonfiction books have an expert who reviews every word. And so we have a lot of help, and I feel like I'm staying away from AI as much as I can. I just feel it's too disembodied for my interests.
Well, you sort of answered Selena's question. Selena was asking, where do you get your information, from a book or your sources about the topic or era that you are writing about? So you sort of answered that one. But the other, and then this one just came in from Lindsay. My daughter would like to know, what do you love most about Jack and Annie?
Oh, I love Jack and Annie so much. And because I don't even think of them as that I created them. Once I got them, they started creating themselves. And sometimes I'll think to myself, oh, I'd like to try this and see how Jack and Annie react. Like, I'm waiting to see how, that's what happens in book writing and fiction. Your characters take over, and that's the thrill of it. If you don't have that thrill, then move on to something else, because I want to know how they're going to respond to a sea monster or helping a child who's hurt or whatever, and who's going to take what role. And Jack and Annie are different, but they like, I have a twin brother, and we're very different, but together we're kind of one. We can make up a whole. So Jack and Annie, Jack's very cautious and thoughtful and academic, and Annie's very spontaneous and rushes into things. And between them, they grow more like the other, so they grow more whole. But knowing them all these years, and that's why I'm so protective of them in terms of media, because I don't want others to tell me who they are. I want them to tell me who they are and me give that out. So I love Jack and Annie. They're very close to me. I think if I was told you can't write any more of these books, I'd secretly have meetings with Jack and Annie just because they feel that real to me.
Well, and then another question here. How do you feel that Magic Treehouse books work well with ELL students, with gifted and talented students, and with students with learning disabilities?
Great question. Yeah, it's used a lot with English as a second language. In one of our productions, a young actress in Newark had learned, she was from Russia, and she had learned English on Magic Treehouse books. So she got to play Annie, and she was spectacular. But they're used with adults in ESL programs. And then they're used also with kids on autism spectrum, because there's a certain comfort in the repetitive format of the books. And I know when I go to bookstores and schools, those kids can be so enthusiastic. And have shared the books in their family, and I find that really joyful. And then the gifted and talented, they can go up to the Merlin missions or the super edition. There's a range there that they can draw from. So they're not just in the basic reading level of the first books. So it kind of, and definitely the nonfiction would figure into the reading of the gifted and talented, and hopefully inspire them to do nonfiction themselves, to research and write their own story about, tell the class about butterflies or how an airplane flies, or, I love this idea. I saw it in one school where a teacher let each child learn the way they learned best. They each took a different Magic Treehouse book to tell the class about the subject of the book, but they did their own research, and it might have been watching TV to get, a documentary. It might have been the internet. It might have been reading a book. It might have been talking to an expert. They got to, one boy who practically couldn't read made a space station around the moon book. And the teacher said it was the first time he was fully engaged in the classroom using Play-Doh to make a space station. So I love, that range of possibility with the way we can educate kids at different levels.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And in fact, one of a teacher in the chat said that she teaches at a school for the deaf, and that she uses your books, and that the kids love your books very, very much. So, so just a real quick plug for First Book, because I see a lot of comments about First Book in the chat, and just want to say that, the AFT has had a very long-term partnership with First Book, as Mary has as well. Mary has given out an amazing 1.2 million books through her program. But First Book, just to say, is a wonderful resource. I encourage everyone who works in a Title I or a Title I eligible school or program, or if you are not an educator, if you're a health professional, any federally funded health clinic, if you're a public employee, any program that you're working with that has 70% or more families that are low income can use First Book. And what First Book does is they work with publishers to receive books at 50 to 90% off the retail costs of the books that they stock on what's called the First Book Marketplace. But then First Book also has these wonderful relationships with authors like Mary, with philanthropies, with corporate funders to try to provide more grant opportunities and other opportunities to get books into the hands of Title I and Title I educators. So if you register with First Book, I swear I'm not a paid spokesperson for First Book. That they're just a wonderful partner with us at the AFT. We've distributed about 10 million books over the last 13 years through our partnership with First Book, and we hope to give out another 10 million more, hopefully. And I know that we have these events with our locals around the country and distribute. We have large distributions, we have small distributions, and it's so inspiring to see these people coming out, families, educators, students, to get books for their classroom or books for their home libraries. And, First Book's just been a great partner to do that. So sorry for the quick little PSA there, everybody. And but we have a couple more questions coming in. Karen asks, how do you believe your books that can help with reinforcing diversity and to help reduce bullying? If you think that your books play a role in kind of helping with that at all.
Well, I would say the signature quality of Jack and Annie is kindness, openness, and learning from others. They go on their missions and get more than they give, which is important to me. They're not going there just helping everybody. They're going and being helped most of the time because they get caught in earthquakes and tsunamis. It's amazing the number of disasters I have with Magic Treehouse, but also with diversity. I've had a great time, and because that's a signature of the series. Jack and Annie, as you know, have been all over the world. We have books that take place in Japan, in China, in India, Ecuador, indigenous people in America, the Lakota, the Wampanoag, and they meet Aborigines and Maori and Mayans and Incans. And on the nonfiction, we have a book that features Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman. And then I wrote a book about Jack and Annie meeting Louis Armstrong when he's only 14 in New Orleans. And they learn about early jazz. And we have a wonderful musical with New Orleans great Alan Toussaint, who wrote the music with my husband, called Treehouse Jazz. And then Jackie Robinson was, like I said, the recent show to go with the book, A Big Day for Baseball. So it's just really a globe. If you just get a globe and point to it, or a world map, we can show the diversity of cultures and places. What I just enjoyed doing was 4 books about people around the world helping to save animals. So they go to South Africa in rhinos at recess and meet African rangers who are really risking their lives to save the rhinos from poachers. Then they go to Ecuador, to the Galapagos Islands, and work with Ecuadorians who are saving giant tortoises on a volcano, which actually is based on a true story, where they helicoptered in to airlift these giant rare tortoises off a volcano mountain. And then I did Mongolia with the indigenous peoples of Mongolia. 40% of Mongolians are nomads. So Jack and Annie stay with the nomad family and learn about, it's a great story. I learned about that they brought back these little rare horses that came from Mongolia for hundreds of thousands of years, but they became extinct. And but there were several left in zoos around the world. So Jack and Annie arrive on the actual day, 1992, in June, when they're bringing 15 of these horses back, so the Mongolians can take care of them in a big range reserve that they've just constructed for the horses. And now they have 600 horses back in their own homeland. So I love doing that. I love showing what people are doing in other countries and cultures that are positive and in connection with our goals here, really, with protecting the environment and animals.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. And is that Mongolian horse, was that something, I remember seeing it at the National Zoo in DC. Is that Przewalski's horse or something like that?
Yeah, that's the name Przewalski. But the Polish man who first discovered it from Europe was named that, but it shouldn't have been named that, in my opinion. Yeah. So the Mongolians call it the Taki. So I called it the Taki, Takhi. And that's one. Well, I have that. Do I have it here? No. It's Windy Night with Wild Horses. And that is one of my most recent favorites, too, because I loved the lifestyle of the nomads. I think I have a bit of nomad in myself. So that was really a joy to find out about.
Very cool. Okay, so here is a question, a little bit, this is from Bill from Read Aloud in Chattanooga. He is asking if you knew the late Jim Treelease, who wrote, I believe, the Read Aloud Handbook, and if you knew him, how well did you know him?
Oh, I did meet Jim, but it must have been at a conference years ago and then lost touch. You know, I've met so many people in the world of children's books, and then especially because I lived in New York City 25 years and I traveled all the time to conferences and schools. But then we kind of slipped up to New England, and I don't go in the city very much, and I don't go to conferences anymore. And now it's kind of wonderful because I have to say that the only positive about the COVID thing was that we could learn to communicate by Zoom with schools and people. So now I'm very happy to do Zooms. But no, I don't. I can't tell you any more about Jim Treeley's. I wish I could.
Well, the last question is for you, Mary. Before we end up here, is there anything else about Magic Treehouse, or being a children's author, or about the collaborative programs that you have, like the Classroom Adventures program, or any of your other programming? The last word is yours.
Well, thank you. The book I'm working on now about the girl at Mary Anning in England is the first of a little spin-off that we're putting together called Magic Treehouse History Heroes. And my goal, and right now I'm scheduled to do 4. Mary is a child who had great disadvantages, and with a lot of spunk and gumption and determination, she made so much of herself. And I'm really giving serious thought to who the next person should be now. Always open to suggestions, but which you could put on the Magic Treehouse Classroom Adventures program. Send me a note. But I'm thinking seriously, I haven't done somebody with special needs as a main character. So I'm thinking of Louis Braille, who created the Braille alphabet in France when he was 15 years old in the 1700s. And it's the same thing they use today with Braille. Didn't change that much. So I'm always, throwing a line ahead. And the one disadvantage of not traveling is I'm always getting people to vote on my ideas and vote on my titles and vote on my covers. I used to do that all the time throughout the country. So now I'm just hoping for the best, that this is a topic somebody would really enjoy finding out about.
Awesome. Well, I would love to see that about the Braille, and maybe a book in Braille. That would be kind of fun. So.
Wow. I think Magic Treehouse is in Braille. I think I did get that notice. Yeah, that would be so satisfying. I'm pretty sure it is.
That is great. Well, Mary, I just want to say thank you so much, and for all this information, and for doing the whole Magic Treehouse series. I hope you do it for a very long time, and there's another 67 books coming.
But thanks, Leslie. I enjoyed it so much, and thank you to this platform. It was wonderful to talk to teachers. Just wonderful.
Yeah, yes, you took the words right out of my mouth. And I just want to thank all of our attendees for coming and joining us. And to say to the attendees that to please take a moment to download your PD certificate and rate and review this webinar on Share My Lesson. Your feedback is very important to the Share My Lesson team, and it helps them determine what to do for future webinar offerings. Also, one last thing, registration is open for the AFT Teach Conference 2025. There's going to be more than 70 workshops on lots of topics. I'm sure the topic of AI will come up. I'm sure the topic of many things will come up, but that educators are facing today. And you can learn more at aft.org/teach. And hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their evening. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.